That's interesting because in ISTE, I did a workshop, and my part of it was about using Google Docs, especially on iPad and on tablets. And the reason I'm focused on iPads and tablets is because I'm looking at ways to integrate the voice capabilities and help students with writing. Are you students on iPads or tablets, or are they using PC?
Primarily, there's the mobile devices that they use. We have internet connection in our classroom, and we have a computer and screen. So most of my students are just bringing their cell phones, which I would say the majority are Android-based. In fact, I would say virtually all of them are. We have a few tablets and a few laptops, but I would say most of them are using their cell phones. So. Yeah, I know that Google Docs has some extensions or programs that you can provide voice as far as feedback goes. I typically, if I do that, I'll just do a screencast. I have software on my computer that I'll do that, but most of my feedback is in the form of comments, and then we discuss a lot of it in class. And kind of generate a discussion in class face-to-face based on feedback or conversations that my students have had as well as I've had with them outside of class. So I don't know, I just haven't found a good fit yet as far as providing a lot of voice feedback yet outside of class. But yeah, it's interesting because this past semester was the first time my students have used Microsoft Online, and I've had these same students in prior semesters where we've used Google Docs, and I did a survey at the end of this semester, and all of the students without exception preferred Microsoft Online, and that might be, again, maybe because of the well, I'm not sure, maybe just the familiarity with using Word they felt more comfortable with. Most of them use Word Online. As you know, you can use Word Online to edit the document, or they can choose, if they have an account with Microsoft, a Hotmail account, they can choose to edit the same document by downloading it onto their computer and then just syncing it. But it was interesting to find out, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to try this past semester, to see how the students, how they liked using it, if they preferred one application over the other, and without exception they preferred Microsoft Online. I mean, that's after having used Google Docs for several semesters, because we've been using it for some time. Most of them are familiar with using it, not only in my class but with other classes. So but yeah, that's kind of I found that interesting this past semester.
Yeah, that is interesting. I've not looked at Microsoft Online, so I'm not familiar with it. But of course, with Google Docs, you can download. You can download a document, and it doesn't actually sync. It syncs though if you're offline. If you're working on your Google Doc offline, it will sync. So I don't know if the format is important for your students, but. Sabrina is text chatting with us. So go ahead and make a comment out there on the veranda.
Basically what I wrote. Yeah, I didn't even know that existed. So this is what's so great about this, is you can just kind of overhear these things and write it down real fast in your notebook. So. That's
right. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people will listen to these podcasts. So even though we've only got a few people here, I know I listen to, like I mentioned, Jeff LeBeau's podcast, the EdTech Talk podcast. I learned a lot from them, and I was really, really pleased to meet people at ISTE. And I would go up and introduce myself and shake their hands, and they almost never knew who I was. But Wesley Fryer did. I was quite happy about that. But anyway. You do learn from them. And I've met people who tell me they listen to all of these podcasts. So, and the things we're talking about now are this is how they learn. So finding out what features are, something, a new tool like Microsoft Online, using Word online. I have to look into that. But as far as as far as using voice, the voice is actually, of course, particular to the device, not so much the application on the device. So if you have a voice-activated keyboard, I don't know how your students are. I know my Arabic students are not very good at, they're not able to make the voice recognition recognize their writing enough for it to be efficient. So, but they don't like to compose on the keyboard. And here again, if you have students trying to compose on their mobile devices, especially if they're smartphones, how does that work for them?
It was kind of a split between, doing actually writing in class and outside of class. A lot of the content that I do for my face-to-face classes, which all my classes are face-to-face, but I also have an online component, as I was mentioning before. But they have access to obviously what we're doing in class, but I'm uploading a lot of information and activities online, what they need to do outside of class. So they will compose a lot in class as well as outside of class. I don't really, it's not a deliberate thing as far as me asking them to have them write in class or outside of class. I always allow time in class for them to work on their projects, their documents. Most of them will work or compose using their device. I think this past semester, maybe 1 or 2 students out of about 15 students that I have in class will use just a regular pen and paper or pencil and paper. Most of them are composing on with their device. Again, if the internet is working, if the broadband is working and they're all connected, and I certainly encourage that in my class. I would prefer that they use their device to write. But we also collaborate. We do a lot of just brainstorming and project discussion. And so we'll use kind of a wiki type setup where I'll project the wiki on the screen in front of the entire class, and they'll go in and collaborate and discuss, and I may ask questions, and they'll post, even though we're all there in the same classroom. But it's interesting to have them have that option of contributing in real time on a canvas, so to speak, so that their voices are heard, and you can get instant feedback as a teacher. You can get instant feedback about how the course is going, and their thoughts depending on what it is you're working on.
Okay, a couple of things from what you just mentioned. Oh, Jerry, could you mute yourself for a second? You can come back in but we're hearing yeah, thanks very much. We're hearing our sound coming back in our speakers. Okay, I hope you're able to hang with us, Jerry. We'll come back to you in a minute. Or maybe, why don't we catch you while you're here? Why don't you tell us who you are and why you're here, and we'll come back to this discussion on writing in a second.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Jerry. I'm a research scholar at the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad. Here, primarily with my research interests, I'm looking at how Internet is helping teachers to build networks and help in their professional development. So when I saw the announcement for this, I was really interested to know more about what you people are going to talk. So that's primarily what.
Where did you see the announcement?
I saw that on Facebook because I'm part of webheads group. It appeared on my timeline and
All right. Well, I'm glad you joined us there. Webheads is our original group, and right now we're doing this under an umbrella called Learning2gether, but it's really an extension of Webheads in a way. So Benjamin and I were talking about I asked him how his students compose, and the reason I asked him that is because they compose in ways similar to the way my students compose. That is, they've got tablets and they have to use the keyboard, or some of them prefer to use paper to write. And of course, Benjamin wants to get their writing into machine-readable form or into something that they can revise using Microsoft Online or Online Word or Google Docs. And so what I've been doing lately is I've been working with my students who are really reticent writers. That is, they do kind of the minimum they can get away with, but they find they're much more. I notice they're much more fluent on pen and paper. So when I give them space to write in class, I have them write however they wish. They can try to put they're using iPads, so they're again have the problem with the keyboard. Some of them like to compose on the keyboard, but many of them they'll write on paper. They might write a paragraph or two. And so what I've been doing is I've been taking their writing and I read it back into the format we're using my own device, in my case an iPad, so I can read what they've written back into the iPad, make some corrections for them, of course, while I'm reading, if it occurs to me. So they have what they've written on paper, and they have what I've put into the iPad. It might be a little bit different, and they can then go through and use that as their starting point. And it's I found that to be a little bit more effective about getting their work onto iPad, where they can then work on it and do it. Because to me, the revision is the most important thing. So that's one because they're. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah. A question, so just so I understand, so they will write up the first draft, for example, you will read it back, and it will, like voice activated, it will convert it to the document, then that you will provide back to the student in the form of a document. Is that, do I understand you correctly?
Yeah, now I'm using Google Docs, so I have them, let's see, yeah, you need to mute Benjamin because it's coming back in the... Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I'm using Google Docs with the students, so when they write for me, they have to create a document and share it with me. I don't know if Microsoft will do that if you can collaborate on documents with the students. But of course, that's one of the great affordances of Google Docs, is they can write something and then they can share it with you. And so I'll just read back into their document. And I use an iPad on one side, and then I have a PC on the other. So when the voice recording doesn't work exactly right, I can go to the PC and make the corrections. I find it really tedious to use the iPad. Try to press down on the word and make it go back and forth. So I find it's with the PC, being able to have a keyboard and actually a mouse that you can point and click and work in that space. That's very useful. So yeah, that's one of the things I do with voice.
Yeah, with Microsoft Online, it's very similar to Google Docs in that you can also share documents, and I do the same thing. In fact, the first day one with my students is they open up a document, they create it, and then they share it. I show them how to share it, and they can share the documents in just a viewable form, that is, share it with someone else where they can just view it without editing it. In my case, I like for them to share it with me where I can also edit it. That way I can add comments. But it's very similar to Google Docs in that respect. And usually it takes a few days to get everybody up and running as far as documents created and everything shared and viewable. And I'm curious, Vince, if your students going into your class when they begin working in this way, if there are any reservations, if they have any, if they're, how comfortable are they sharing their documents, presumably in public to the whole world, but also sharing it with you or perhaps their other classmates? How do they respond to that?
That's a very good question. I think we've pretty much got most of our student body now into the Google, because other teachers are using this as well. So when the students come in, we go through a big deal about getting all of them into Google Docs. But when I used to do it just myself and tell the students that we're going to work in Google Docs in this class, there was a lot of resistance. And sometimes one or two students would do it, and then I would start correcting their work on the screen in front of the class, and the other students could see, oh, this is neat. So they would then get more into it. But nowadays I don't have that problem so much. they pretty much all see that if they don't use Google Docs, they're just out of the loop. But of course, I used to give them options to write on paper, but I just can't give feedback very well on paper. Compared to Google Docs, it's too time-consuming. Google Docs, I have two things that I use, only two things, and one is to leave a comment, and the other is to make a strike-through. So with those tools, and they both have shortcuts. So if you use the shortcuts on your keyboard, it's quite quick. And anyhow, I can go quickly through their documents. And also, you can voice activate the comments. So you can go around the class with your iPad or your tablet, and you can be standing next to one student, and you're both looking at the same document, and you could say, well, right here, you can press on the document and then click on the comment feature. I think actually now on the iPad, you click plus, and you can add an image, a table, or a comment. So if you find the plus, you can even more quickly add a comment. So you just isolate the place on the screen, press plus, and then press the mic icon on your keyboard, and then you can speak what you want the student to do, and that's very quick. And once you've saved that, the student can see it, the student can act on that. So it's a quick way to move around a class and and do interact with your students. I have 20 in a class, so I know I've seen your classes. They're a bit smaller, probably half that size. So it's probably a little easier to work with them like that. Elizabeth Ann has just joined us, and Elizabeth, Sabrina's still there, I hope. She's out on the balcony outside. So Elizabeth, how are you? We were talking about you earlier today. All good things, I assure you.
Oh, well, I hope so. I missed that. Absolutely fine. As I was saying, it's just it's so hot. Everyone is melting. Surely it's the same for you there?
Well, let me think. We're a bit further south, but we're right with cool breezes by the coastline. But anyway, I'm coming from Abu Dhabi, so UAE, where it's 50 degrees out, so I haven't really noticed the heat.
No. This is just too much. Yes, I was very sorry to miss the Philadelphia live. I was trying to listen, but I haven't quite got around to it yet.
I have a confession to make about that one. That was the first time I'd ever tried to set up a Hangout. Actually, I'm kind of doing that here. I switched because we were having bandwidth issues when Benjamin was talking. I took the iPad out of the Hangout, but I set this PC here up as a hub, and then I brought the iPad into the Hangout, made sure everything was muted so we didn't get any voice feedback, except I had the earphones in the iPad. And I went around the room and while the thing was going on, and my camera was, when you're holding the iPad, you're wiggling it around. Bobby was having trouble with it just a minute ago. It's really hard to, I need to have a technique where the iPad stays steady. So that's the next challenge I'm going to make. But the audio is quite nice, and well, have a look at the video and see, until you get dizzy, start throwing up or something like that, then it should be fine.
Yeah.
You can always switch to the audio.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll do.
Sabrina, what were we saying about Elizabeth Ann earlier? Do you remember? This is before the Hangout.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. The heat's getting to me as well. But at one point, Elizabeth Ann was talking about, she was talking about going camping, and you were saying we should all set up something where we're all camping and trying to do something. I think Jeff in one of his things had in the I've Got a Question had people camping. They were all trying to, or one lady was camping with a fire. The camera faced towards a little fire. It might be difficult. I don't know.
Well, Benjamin and I were talking about I'm really interested in what Benjamin was saying, because this is what I'm working on. Benjamin was talking about what he will be doing next year technology-wise, and this is the thing he's been focusing on, is using tablet tools to have his students write, how he can use those to greater effect. He's using Microsoft online tools, Microsoft Word online. He's having his students interact there. And so it's interesting to compare how he's doing it and how I'm doing it. There's another thing I wanted to tell Benjamin about brainstorming tools. There's something that I've found called Doc Story Builder, Google Docs Story Builder. If you put those 4 words into a Google search, you'll come up on the site, which is a neat little tool that lets the students create dialogues and set them to music. And so I use it as a brainstorming tool, and the students put their names in, and then the first character comes up. Let's say if you have 2 students, the first character comes up, the student speaks or writes a dialogue, because again, you have your voice activation if you're using a tablet. However you do it, the student gets the first thing in. Let's see, what aspects of this topic should we cover? And the second student hits the next character button, and they have to do this on one device, by the way, so everything gets done on one device. It's not collaborative in that respect, but the second student puts another part of the dialogue, and the next student comes back and asks another question or adds an aspect or whatever, and anyway, when they've had a few rounds, then they stop and they set that to music, and the music is kind of movie theme stuff, that it can be schmaltzy or it can be kind of dramatic, and when it's all played, it's played back to that music, and of course you share the link, so the students really like, when you get a class of them doing it together, and then you come back and you bring up your brainstorming, everyone's brainstorming onto a central space. You can also share it on Google Docs, by the way, so if you go to my Google+, I think Maria Calusa found one of the dialogues we'd done at ISTE, and she came back and said, "Oh, I really like this tool." So it's social, or it can be.
Vance, is that an account that is that an account that a separate account than from the Google account, or if the students have an account already, is it something they sign in to using their Google account?
They don't have to sign in. You just do it. You go to the site, Google Docs Story Builder, put in those 4 words, you'll land on the site and into Google, and no accounts are needed. You just start. You just create a dialogue, and if you happen to be logged onto your Google account, then you can share it. But in the same when you click share the link, you have the option of sharing it to Google Docs, or copying the link and sharing it somewhere else, or both. You can do both. So hadn't even used the Google Plus share until ISTE. I just shared when someone was asking me about it, so I said, okay, let's try it. So then the next thing you know, part of my history, my timeline, is this crazy little shared doc story app. I don't know if I recommend that. But anyway, for class purposes, they get a shared link, and they can all bring the link back to the class wiki or wherever. Okay, so anyway, I don't know how I'm visiting these really nice people here, Sabrina and her husband Gary, and my wife is with me here as well. So we're on holiday basically, except that tomorrow I've got a presentation, which, by the way, in case you missed it, I'm going to broadcast from the conference in Blackboard Collaborate, Illuminate, and it's at 5:15, which is 15:15 GMT. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to the usual spaces, learning2gether.pbworks.com. That'll show you where it is. But it's in the Webheads room, so in case you happen to know where the Webheads Illuminate chat room is, you can go there. And it's not going to be interactive particularly. I'm just going to give the 30-minute presentation, and might leave room for questions at the end. I'll put the slides online and everything, of course, but that's basically the last thing I have to do professionally until August 9th when I'm back at work. So I'm kind of on my summer holiday, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with Sabrina and Gary, because I'm kind of a stick in the mud right now. I'm doing Hangouts with them and making my PowerPoints and things like that. anyhow. What was everybody else doing this summer? Getting a summer holiday? I think Elizabeth just had one.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, in India, there is no summer holiday right now.
Summer heat wave.
Yeah, summer is almost done. We're just moving to the monsoon. And while I was listening to you all, like, I mean, I feel I'm the youngest one in this group. And I really appreciate, like, I mean, the work that you're doing. Sometimes I just wonder, because I mean, the Google Docs is something which I use, and then I encourage my colleagues to use. But sometimes people are very skeptic, like, I mean, of using. They're very comfortable with whatever they're using right now, rather than trying out something new. So I would just like to know, like, I mean, how to make people confident, like, I mean, how to bring them in.
That's a very good question. It's, I guess, one that I've watched develop in my colleagues over the years, of the past several years. People are now quite comfortable with Google Docs, but it happens a little bit year after year. You know, that I think you have to model for them. You have to show them what you're doing. Find opportunities to share things with them that would, if you see what they're doing, like, for example, they're sending email attachments. They've misplaced the up-to-date attachment. You could show them, well, you know, we can put this in a Google Doc, and then you'll always be able to go to this one place and you'll get the latest version. So that's that kind of thing, I think. I don't know if anybody has other suggestions. You had this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Vance too. I think just by showing and sharing, in fact, it's almost an opportunity to start collaborating more with other teachers to show kind of what the students are doing. And I think if you can focus on what students are doing, the successes that they're having, even the challenges, and you have that honest conversation, I think that other teachers will be more inclined to try something out. And, you know, if you're already doing it and you make yourself available and other teachers, other educators know that there's support, you know, if they need to ask questions, I think that's also an important piece, being available and, you know, just not only sharing your experiences, but be willing to help. I think a lot of teachers will be more inclined to take on these new tools and try them out in their own context.
Yeah, and another thing, when you're using it with students in class, if you can show results from, because it's definitely better, or, you know, I mean, you get students revising more, you can work with students, you can work more effectively with students. I imagine your class sizes in India are very large, so you probably have very limited things you can do when the students are writing on paper, or however they're doing it. And I mean, you can use track changes on Word, for example. That could be effective, but when you bring things to a common space, you can work more quickly with students. You can work with them in real time. If you have a projector at the front of the class that projects the work that they're doing, you can get results from students in real time. So I think these the way you can organize work in Google Docs, and Benjamin has just mentioned Microsoft Word. I don't know how the organizational tools are in Word, but in Google Docs you can organize things. You can search on anything you're looking for in a huge database of documents you accumulate. And Benjamin was asking me how students feel about sharing work with each other. What my students will do sometimes is they'll share work and then copy and
10 articles, we've got 10 columns, each person is adding their words, and the actual sort of, you know, the real-time effect is very motivating. And then the end of the thing is that then when they go around reading each other's documents and answering the questions, others have this backup vocabulary sheet ready to use. It was, you know, went down very well with these students. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I was just moving around to show you Sabrina out there. Did you see how we're configured? We've got Sabrina out here on the veranda, and we've got her dog Dude in here. Not sure where Gary has gone. He might have gone surfing or something like that. Anyway, so this is we're at Sabrina's house, and in difference to my hosts and hostesses, I would like to say we're up at the top of the hour, and it's not like I'm in my living room, although they're making me feel pretty much at home here. But we probably should wind this up because it's coming to the top of the hour.
Vance, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Yeah. While I was listening to Elizabeth on how to encourage the colleagues to be online, I was reminded of my own personal experience. When I send emails, I insert link as hypertext within the word. So some of my colleagues who were kind of interested, how do I do it? I got a chance to explain to them how to do it. So all of you mentioned the same thing, model yourself and then let others come along. I was reminded of that. Thank you.
I'm just unmuting myself here. There we go. Getting back on my PC. Okay, well, yeah, thanks a lot for everyone coming. We can keep doing this for another hour. Sometimes when I'm operating from UAE, I might just go for an hour and a half. Often happens like that. Yeah. But anyway, certainly appreciate everyone coming along, and nice to see Sabrina. Often I don't interact with her just from a short distance away. She often comes to our Hangouts. So Sabrina, do you want to come back online with your video? And she's waving a fan out there.
Yeah,
mentioned
it's
roasting.
warm. It's pretty warm here too.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's very cool in here, by the way.
I know. Being as your guest, I thought you'd let you use the air conditioning.
Gosh, I would feel so honored.
Yeah, well, you're the visitor.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm sorry I was late, and lovely to hear you all. Have a great holiday, Vance.
Yeah, when it starts. Conference is over in a couple of days, but the presentation is tomorrow. So, yeah, okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming. This has been a great way to spend the 5th of July after American Independence Day. There's fireworks all over the place here. I don't think it has anything to do with Independence Day, but apparently something to do with Spanish character and personality. Anyway, thanks. Benjamin, Cherry, Elizabeth, Ann, and my wife Bobby are here. And the other people, we have Sam from Algeria up here, and so I think it was Li Wang from somewhere who couldn't quite stay. But anyway, welcome to everybody. Nice to meet Cherry, and see you guys maybe another time.